Hi, welcome back to our Women in Jazz series, celebrating Women's History Month here at Jazz Arts Group. My name is Alexa Brennan, and I'm the Education and Outreach Coordinator here at Jazz Arts Group. Today, I have the honor of interviewing Linda Landis. She is both a classical and jazz trombonist and leads the trombones in the Columbus Jazz Orchestra. As a matter of fact, she's been in the band for over 15 years. In addition to her time with the CJO, she's also played with the Diva Jazz Orchestra and with Von Weister's famous jazz orchestra on Monday nights here in Columbus. We are so excited to share with you her thoughts and experiences here today, but first, here's a clip of her performing. Thank you so much for joining us for our Women in Jazz series. We're really excited to get some of your insights on everything. We know that you are the lead trombonist in the Columbus Jazz Orchestra, in addition to being an incredible jazz and classical trombonist. So I wanted to ask, first and foremost, how did your journey with the trombone start? We know that it's not a traditionally female instrument. So what made you choose that, and how did you get to here today?
Okay. Well, I started out playing the trombone when I was 10 in the 5th grade. And it was, I'm not afraid to say how old I am. It was 1965. Okay. So in 1965, girls did not traditionally play the trombone. And I did happen to see another gal playing one, but I didn't know what was in the case because she was the assistant troop leader of our Girl Scout troop. And I was in the Girl Scouts for a while. And she had this case with her every Tuesday night at the meetings. And I was always curious, but I'm too introverted and shy to ask what's in it. So I just thought, well, be patient. You'll find out someday. So a high school band did a program, an assembly where the high school band played when I was in 4th grade at the time I saw this. So this was 64. And I thought, wow, that's what's been in that case. That looks like fun. I want to play that. So the following year in 65, when we got to pick instruments, that's when I picked the trombone, and I've never looked back.
Oh, that's wonderful. When did you transition into playing jazz music? Did you hear it at a certain time, or when did you decide that you wanted to start pursuing that as well?
My private teacher was my band director. He was a great trombone player. And he took us to Moorhead's band clinic twice. Once when I was a sophomore and once when I was a senior. And when I was a senior, I got to hear the big band. When I was a sophomore, they had a stage band with vocalists out front. And that was really cool because I'd never seen anything like that live before. A band clinic was amazing to me because I didn't know tubas could do more than oompa. And there was a whole percussion ensemble doing everything except just playing snare drums and bass drums, right? So when I'm a senior, he takes me back again, and I heard the big band, and they were just the most fabulous thing I'd ever heard. And I just freaked. I said, where's this been all my life? And he's like looking at me like I'm from outer space because he wasn't a jazz player. So back then in 72, 73, girls still had not been allowed in the Ohio State Marching Band. They had not been allowed in the Marching Men of Ohio at Ohio University. And we did not allow women in our pep band at our high school. So he and I got into a little thing after school one night. And I said, well, what do we have to look forward to? He was speechless. So he started a stage band to satisfy that need that I had to do something other than just play in. Our high school band was a middle school level playing band. But when I started taking lessons, it went in like 2 weeks. I couldn't believe the difference that little nudge made in my playing. And he started the stage band, and I think everybody had fun. We didn't really know what improvisation was, but I was doing it at home along with my records, not knowing what it was, because I would put on a record that my grandma had given me, like Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass. I had that style nailed because I played along with it all the time. I played along with the melody, then I'd learn the trombone part, and then I'd make up my own part to go in between. I'd do some tight harmonies, and I went, wow, that sounded really cool. And then I'd just start making up other things to go along, not realizing that was called improvisation. So when I had this solo in Fun Time, it was a bunch of, chord changes. We didn't know what that meant. We'd never seen it before. He yells, improvise. Okay, what does that mean? Because he wasn't a jazz player. So it wasn't the best experience, but it was a really good one. And then when I got to college, the guys recruited me into the jazz program at Moorhead and were encouraging me to audition for the jazz ensemble.
Well, I do want to talk a little bit about your lead playing.
Mm-hmm.
What records or what bands do you look to in order to foster that sound of a lead trombonist? You have such a strong sound. Who inspires that sound in you?
Several people. Um, when I was playing along with those records, I was playing along with Tommy Dorsey and Irby Green. They were great players. They had a great sound. I tried to play along with them to play every note exactly like they did and try to get those sounds because they were beautiful sounds. And then when I got to college, I just did some do-do, a little half step. And that was when the director I was in the first band at the time. We were doing a beautiful arrangement around midnight. He wanted a little grease on it. And I just did da-da, and he screamed at me, do something with that note. Haven't you ever heard of Dick Shear? And I leaned over to the guy next to me and I said, who's Dick Shear? And he said, well, he's the lead player in the Kenton Orchestra. Okay. So I then go out we had a Ben Franklin down the street and then we had other diamond stores at home. And I looked for Kenton albums and I found Live in London, which I think was made in 1972, maybe 74. Okay. In London. It was a live album. It was like the last stop on a Big Ten country tour or something. I dropped the needle on that one tune, Malagueña, and I went, whoa, listen to what he does with all those notes. And that's what he wanted. And little grease. He didn't want a half step. He wanted grease on that half step. So then I heard recordings of the North Texas Jazz Ensemble. That's what he wants. He wants this extroverted, let the audience enjoy it and just, stick it out and with enthusiasm. And so Dick Shear is probably my main influence because of how he revolutionized the way I think about playing lead. And a lot of people don't like it, but I've tried to refine it and I try to use it judiciously and I try not to go over the top like he did sometimes. But I've listened to people like Ian McDougall from the Boss Brass in Canada, great lead player. And Bobby Fitzpatrick of the older Kenton era. I mean, I listened to all these different players, Kai Winding, just all of these guys. And, I have a kind of a classical sound, I think, because I'm such a classically trained musician. And I worked toward having the beauty of sound that my teacher in college, Earl Lauder, had. I have the beauty of his sound in my head all the time. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm thinking when I'm playing.
Yeah. You mentioned that your director was male. You mentioned that a lot of your influences were male, that the guys were the ones who got you into the jazz band in college. Did you have any female influences or mentors as you were growing up?
I didn't know about them. I didn't know about Melba Liston. I didn't know about Janice Robinson, Audrey Morrissey. See, I can't remember her last name. She was on one of Diva's first record, I think. And now that you have the Diva Jazz Orchestra, when I heard them in Dayton, I went, whoa, yeah. And then I wrote Sherry. I said, if you ever come to the area and you need a sub, I'd love to play with the band. So she said, well, do you have any recordings I can listen to? And I said, sure. So I had a friend of mine cobble together a lot of live things from Vaughn's thing. And then I played the Carnival of Venice by Arbin with the Tip Pacific Band. And I put that on there too, so they can hear my technique, so I send this off and 2 weeks later I got a call. Can you come up to New York and do the Verizon Festival with us? And I'm going, I'm going to look at my calendar. Yes. So that in 2001, May of 2001, I flew up there and did that. It was an hour long. I had just an amazing time. Yeah. And you talked about sound. Lee Pilzer was sitting in front of me on tenor and she turned around and she said, what a sound. And those women played loud because Deborah asked me, do you have earplugs? The one thing I left at home. She said, find something to put in your ears. So Lisa Whitaker is frying this ear with her lead trumpet because she played down like this. And Sherry's frying this ear with her cymbals. And I'm going, oh, I wish I had my earplugs. But, oh, I love it. It was a great frying because they were such fabulous musicians. Mm-hmm. And my ears weren't right for 6 months, literally. But, it didn't bother me because I was playing with such a hot band. I mean, it was a great band,
Oh,
so.
I wanted to talk about your experience with Diva. I also wanted to talk about your experience with the Von Weister Band. It's the famous jazz orchestra. They're here in Columbus. Tell us a little bit about your experience with Von in that band.
Vaughn is the reason I'm in Columbus. Thank you, Von Weister. I pay you homage today. Um, I was playing a gig with him down in Cincinnati. It was with the uh, Bill Walters big band. Somebody called me to sub for them. So I'm sitting in on the third trombone part, and I'm playing my thing. And this guy by the name of Von Weister is playing lead. And he looked at me and he said, "Do you have a card?" And this is funny because I'm thinking, well, yet another one that asked me for a card that'll never call me. So this is the day. And it was like a week or two later, I'm fishing up at the lake and I get this phone call. Well, actually, it was a pager. My pager went off. Okay, back in the days of pagers. And I looked at that and it was a Columbus area phone number. And I thought, oh, maybe this is this fella calling me. So I had one of the little flip phones back then. I called him back, and sure enough, he said, "Hey, baby," that's how he talks. "Hey, baby, can you come up and fill in on the third trombone part for me tonight?" He said, "John can't always make it. I need somebody to play the part. Would you be willing to do it?" And I looked at my watch and I said, "I have plenty of time to get there and get cleaned up." So I sat in that night and played the third book. And Chris Cromley was playing lead, and it was funny because he looked at me and went, "My God," because I literally played a flawless night, as I remember. And back in the days when I hardly ever made a mistake, right? Now I'm a little older and I make a mistake here and there. I'm not afraid to admit it because we're human, we're not perfect. So, and it was like, I don't know, about a couple of weeks later, he just quit the band. And Vaughn calls me up and says, "Hey, baby, it's going to be a long haul for you, but if I have to look for key players every week, I'm liable to bag the band. Would you like to come up and be my lead player?" Well, this is an opportunity opening up. Let's see where it leads. So I show up, I play the gig, I become his lead player, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years. And then Ray Eubanks would come out and listen to the band at the beginning of the season to hear who was in the band. And then he hears me playing, and I get a phone call from Ray Eubanks saying, "I've got a contract in the mail for you for the upcoming show." And I'm going, "Oh, Ray Eubanks," and that's when I started subbing with the band. So it actually led somewhere. Thank you, Von Weister. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you are one of my favorite players in the Columbus Jazz Orchestra. And I was reading up on an interview you did with Jazz Columbus a few years ago, and you mentioned that when you're out, the audience, and I've heard this myself too, the audience tends to ask the question, "Where's the girl in the band? Is the girl sick?" They love you, they care about you, as we all do, but they also mention that you're the girl in the band. What is your experience in the Columbus Jazz Orchestra, and do you feel like you wear that label of the girl in the band?
Well, I'm so used to being the only girl in the band all the years I've played that it just kind of goes with it, I think. But it just got me right here, when someone said, "Where's Linda? Where's Linda?" And I think it was when it was during Lion King. They did that interview and that photo shoot during Lion King when I was on Lion King and not playing with them that week. And they wanted to know where I was, and it's funny because there's the shot of the band and they're all guys again, and I'm not in there, but yeah, I mean, it gets me right here to know that they do appreciate it and that they're fans, and they'd probably like to see more of that. I know they'd like to see more women in the band, you know, but it was weird to know that, hey, they wanted to know where I was.
But to that point, it's also important to note that there's a history of women in music, especially women in jazz music, needing to really glamorize their appearance in order to feel recognized and feel like their playing will even be heard. And that's not something that you typically do. You don't typically glamorize your appearance. You've said in the past that it's so that the guest artist is the one who's being looked at and being focused on. And so I think for a lot of people, I know for myself, the first few times I saw the band, as you're learning who the Columbus Jazz Orchestra is, you don't realize there is a girl in the band to have that label. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's my 17th year coming up. And when I look at all the photographs of the band, I think to myself, if you weren't looking for me, would you know there was even a woman in the band? And would you? would you know that, you've already said you had to have somebody point me out, because I try to blend in. I don't want to be so glamorized that the attention is on me, because I'm a part of a bigger picture. I'm a part of the band. So I try to blend in. And I'm a rather simple and conservative dresser anyway. I mean, I'm in a polo shirt today, but I don't wear a lot of makeup because I'm from a farm. I just don't feel comfortable with a lot of makeup and my face jumping out at everybody. And I'm a shy, introverted person by nature. And maybe some people don't perceive me as that, but that's really what I am. I have a few little artistic quirks that might put some people off, which I didn't realize I had until I just kind of and found out, oh, well, that kind of describes me, doesn't it? But, it's I don't want to upstage a guest artist by getting too sparkly. And it's true that when you look at women today in the music business, it's the glamour you see first, and it's like the sexuality has to come out before you hear them play. And then you finally hear them play and you think, wow, man, she really can play. Because there's always that stigma that, well, girls can't do this, and yes, we can. And the Diva Jazz Orchestra is a perfect example. And they don't dress in a glamorous way either. They just wear all black, like we all generally do on stage. We wear black. And because we're a part of a bigger picture, we don't want to just stand out as individuals. We're part of a group. So, it's always kind of bothered me that you wouldn't know there's a woman on that stage unless somebody physically pointed it out. Hey, look, I think that's a woman. And I do try to dress differently sometimes, where I might have a striped sweater on instead of the black jacket. Because I remember when Deborah Weiss was the lead trombonist on the Frank Sinatra tour. She played lead with Diva in the early days. And she wore a short sleeve magenta top, which doesn't go with my hair color. But she wore that, okay? And she's in black slacks and everybody else is in tuxedos. And she looked great as being the only woman, So I tried to find a color very similar to that, but I don't shop in New York. So I couldn't find the kind of top that she had, which is, I wanted blue. So it's just a different color sitting back there, and then, there is a lady back there on the stage, but, the glamour is not really who I am.
So do you feel like you would dress the same and put the same appearance out at, let's say, CJO or even Von Weister concerts, if you got to choose? If there wasn't a stigma of the more glamorous, the better the player, or if there wasn't a thing of like, you want to blend in with the band, would you choose to wear the same things?
Probably. Yeah. Because I'm rather conservative. I've always been of the attitude, let the horn do the talking and they'll notice. And men will notice how well you play. So will the women. Like at the club, the women saw me as a trombone player before the men did. The men saw me as a singer because I did vocals at the club. But they'll notice, just like we notice the women in Diva, they're musicians. We don't think of them as women. We think of them as great musicians,
yes.
But that's how I am. I'd rather let the horn do the talking rather than to, like the Ina Ray Hutton, they were in gowns and all of the glamour and everything. And I just don't feel comfortable with all the glamour.
We're gonna get a little bit more into this tomorrow with Mercedes Chomos and Rachel Asbell talking about gendered instruments and knowing that the trombone is typically gendered as a male instrument. As you were growing up and learning the trombone, you spoke a little bit about your pushback in jazz, but did you ever get pushback for being a female trombonist?
I think it's maybe, I can't think of, well, yeah, I've had a bad experience. It was not long ago with a band. I had to sub for someone who had a heart attack. I'm not going to say who it was. And, I'm helping him out. I'm playing his chair. Okay, he's the band leader, right? And I'm playing his chair. He revamped the entire big band concert, so I couldn't play his Tommy Dorsey solos, which he knows I can do, right? And then there was a 6-piece band wedding or a small band wedding. And the first set was rather tense, and I could feel the tension amongst the guys in the band because they were so quiet during the entire first set, and I could feel this tension because of what the band leader was doing. He pulled up a bunch of things that had issues with the charts that I wouldn't know about, and the one was I've got a 12 bar. I'm playing a solo on Unforgettable. Oh, this is really cool. I get a solo, and pretty. I like to play pretty. And then I get this 12 bar rest, and the alto player's going, "That's you." I've got 4 bars out. He said, "No, that's you." And then the leader's just strutting around going, "Oh, don't worry about it. I'm not going to fire you." And I just say this facetiously, so understand. But I looked at him over the top of my glasses as he strutted away, and I thought to myself, don't step in front of my truck when I leave tonight. Because he was basically sabotaging me on this gig. And then he pulled up another chart that had an issue that I wouldn't know about. And I thought, gee, that's kind of a nice counterpoint. He doesn't write like that. And I jumped ahead a measure and caught the band. And then he pulled up Girl from Ipanema, who we all know has a very tough bridge. But what he didn't know was I had worked on that bridge myself, and now I can nail it, right? I have a formula for how I play the bridge. So I nail it, and it's, he left at intermission. And the rest of the gig went without a hitch. And the guys loosened up, and we all had a great time. But there was a lot of tension on that very first set. And it's one band I will never play with again. I don't need that in my life because that was so high school. And most of the pushback I got was from high school, where I was pushed down the last chair by the boys in the band because I was a girl. Girls can't play trombone. I'd say, yeah, well, watch this. And I had all of my music memorized, including the entire etude book that we used in band. And they'd steal the book from me. And she'd say, let's do number 13. And then they're looking at me like, oh, she can still play it. I had them all memorized because I practiced all the time, and I kept perseverance is the one thing that I've always had. It's okay. You'll still be here playing the trombone when they all quit to play basketball. And I was.
So you've mentioned in interviews before that you felt you had a harder time landing gigs after college than your male counterparts. Could you talk a little bit about that experience and how you think it may have shaped where you are now as a player?
Well, there's always been a political aspect to the music business. And I think it's always going to be there. But I think the future is a little brighter now than it was back then. Yeah, you didn't see very many women. I mean, I was almost always, the only woman in the band on those gigs. On rare occasions, there might be a lady in the trumpets. I don't remember any women in the saxophone section, but there might be another trombone player. So it would be on a rare occasion that you would see another woman in the band. And it's funny because every band leader has a list of players. And you never know if you're at the top or the bottom of the list, okay? And on those occasions when you get this rare call from this one band leader that has never called you before, and all of a sudden they need you, and they say, if you can't make it, could you give me a list of names so I can find somebody? And at that moment, I was in my headset of, yeah, and I'll be the last one you call the next time you need somebody, because it's a guy thing. And it's mostly guys that you see in those bands. But in the bands I grew up in, they all had daughters my age. They were wonderful guys and amazing musicians. And they always looked out for me, so it kind of made me feel special, And they always said, if you ever have a problem walking back to the car after a gig, let us know. We'll walk you back to the car. We don't have a problem with that. Yeah, I think it's going to be easier for women in the future, but there really aren't that many big bands around anymore. But there are more women getting into music. And, when you look at the Terry Lynn Carringtons and the Ingrid Jensens and the Annette Cohens and the Nikki Perrots and Deborah and her daughter, Dania Gergel in Brazil, there are more women in jazz now than there were before.
Linda, thank you so much for joining us for this series. We are so excited that we got a chance to speak with you, and we are excited to be seeing you perform with the band again in April on JAG TV. Viewers can go to jag.tv, and you'll be one of the many wonderful musicians up on that stage, and I hope that we get a chance to showcase your musicianship then.
Well, thank you for asking me to be a part of it.
Of course. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And to our audience, I hope that you take this information and that you join us again tomorrow.